Welcome to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerantz. Our guest, Gary DeLong. Gary is a member of the Long Beach City Council. He also has advanced to a general election for a congressional seat serving significant portions of Los Angeles and Orange counties. We congratulate you. Your opponent in that race will be Alan Lowenthal, a state senator. In your race, there is one Democrat and one Republican, but that wasn't necessarily the case because of a new law that was passed dealing with open primaries. Explain what the law is, if you may.
I will. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me back.
Please.
I'm delighted to be here. So the new law says the top 2 vote getters move on to the general regardless of party. So there are some races in Orange County where the top 2 are Republicans. There are certainly some races in LA County where the top 2 are Democrats, and we're just going to have to see how this works out.
So talk to us about the race. It was a tremendous victory. You actually defeated a former congressman, Steve Kuykendall. Mr. Lowenthal, a worthy opponent, has advanced as well. What do you make of the race?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that both Steve and Alan ran great campaigns, very vigorous campaigns, so I applaud them for that, and I know that Alan's going to work even harder as we head to the general election. I feel good that we had an informed electorate. In fact, one of the things that I think I don't know if proud's the right word, but I'm pleased to see is I get a sense that people were voting more for the person than the party this time around.
And let's talk about that, because I think it's fair to say California is a blue state.
Yes,
Mr. Obama continues to lead in the polls.
Definitely.
You're running as a moderate Republican. At the top of your ticket will be Mitt Romney. I think it's fair to say that Mitt Romney probably won't be competing in California. That being said, you're still looking for victory in November, and you believe you have the calculation to do it.
Well, first of all, let me say that it's clear that Mr. Romney is competing financially in California, because I know he's out here fundraising in the Golden State.
As is Mr. Obama.
Exactly,
right.
They both are.
So how do you lure Democrats, which you'll need to do in a district that has more Democrats? And presumably those Democrats would start with Mr. Obama at the top of the ticket in terms of pulling that lever.
No, that's a great question. And it's not just Democrats, because think about it, that over 20% are declined to state independents. These are people that don't belong to any party, and that's the fastest growing designation in California's decline to state.
Right.
But if I can, let me just read a couple of emails. I'm just going to give you a sentence from each one.
Okay.
And let's see what it talks about. So this is the days leading up to the election. And it says, I'm voting for you, Gary. Appreciate the focus of your campaign. This is the first time in my life I'm voting for a Republican.
Wow.
Good luck. And I'll give you one more.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've ever allowed a Republican to place a sign in our yard.
Oh my.
We support you 100%.
That's remarkable.
And that's about my campaign, but I think it means a lot more than my campaign. I'm sensing that this is a current in California. They're going to vote for the person, not the party. And I'm encouraged by that. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm encouraged.
But there's no doubt that Democrat, Republican, Independent, the issue that will really permeate every ounce of this campaign will be the economy.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about the economy in Southern California and specifically in the Long Beach region. We know that the ports of LA and Long Beach, the Twin Ports, are so critical to this city, this region, and all of Southern California. Talk to me about the ports and the importance of them.
Well, it's critical for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, the whole goods movement industry, the import, the exports, I mean, that's important for all of Southern California, the Western United States. But what's particularly important for this Long Beach, Orange County area is the jobs it creates, because these are well-paying, long-term, sustainable jobs. So as the port grows, and it has to grow in a modern, environmentally sensitive way, but as it grows, it creates jobs for our citizens. That's something we all need.
Well, let's talk about growth, because we know that in April of 2012, the Middle Harbor project was announced.
Correct.
Ground broke in May. This is a $4.6 billion project. It's estimated that this Middle Harbor project will create 14,000 permanent jobs.
In addition to the interim jobs for constructing over the next decade.
This is huge.
It's huge.
And talk to us about the process whereby this project came to Long Beach. It could have gone to Panama, it could have gone to Savannah, it could have gone to New Orleans, it could have gone to Seattle.
It could have gone to a number of places, absolutely. Well, first of all, kind of from a negative perspective, it took too long.
Oh, you wanted it sooner?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been on the drawing boards for too long. There was too much government regulation. There was too much process. So I think that's a takeaway as a government official that I take is how can we improve that process at a local, state, and federal level, that when you have a great project like this, you got to move it forward faster. You got to do it more economically. But that's behind us. But we're moving forward. We're all supporting the port, again, at that federal, state, and local level, and whatever we can do to expedite the process, get it moving, create jobs, we're going to make it happen.
I also want to talk about the environment, because you mentioned that it's important that any development be done in a clean and green way. And actually, the Port of Long Beach recently completed its Clean Trucks program, which decreased pollution tremendously.
Yes.
That was a real, you got a Green Star for that one.
A couple of Green Stars, and it wasn't just the Clean Truck program, it's part of the whole Clean Air Action Plan at the port. It's reducing ship emissions as they come in, so they burn a better quality diesel fuel.
You plug in now too.
Cold ironing, so instead of running your diesel auxiliary engines, you plug into electrical power, which is cleaner. It's a number of things. Your
twin, the Port of Long Beach, or excuse me, Port of Los Angeles, became the first North American seaport to join what's called the Environmental Ship Index program.
Yes.
And I presume that Long Beach is looking to adopt that program.
Absolutely.
It's the first port, I believe, in North America to adopt it.
Yes, we're looking at that very closely. I expect to sign on in the near future. Anything that's environmentally supportive of the community, the Port of Long Beach is going to embrace.
Let's talk about the environment, because I have known you for some time, and I think it's fair to say you are an environmentalist, whatever that means. You know,
well, I can tell you what it means to me personally.
Right.
I mean, from my current elected official position, it means cleaning up recreational water. I've taken the Alamitos Bay marinas from D's and F's. At the best, when I got there, it's now A's and B's from heel to bear. Colorado Lagoon, you've been referred to as the polio pit for 50 years. We're dredging all the toxic sediment. We had A's and B's in the last few weeks.
But
we're doing great.
How are you going to balance your environmental record with a record in Washington of Republicans who, I mean, just objectively don't see what you describe as important as important?
It is important, but the key word is balance, and you said it. It's balance. So you need to balance your environmental sustainability with economics. It's balance, and I think we can do both. We've certainly done it at the Port of Long Beach, right? Here's a port that's growing, that's modernizing, that's reducing its emissions. We've proven it's a model that works.
For example, let's look at the Keystone Pipeline issue,
yes,
which is a pipeline that would go from Canada through the middle of the country down to New Orleans. It has become a lightning rod. The Obama administration, they have not completely opposed it, but they want to take a go-slow approach, whereas the Republicans in Congress want to greenlight that immediately.
Yes.
And where do you come down on that project?
Good. Well, that's a great example. I think we should greenlight it immediately, but we have to do it in an environmentally sensitive way.
But what does that mean?
What that means is you can't have any negative impacts on the surrounding environment.
But even states in the middle of the country, the reddest of red states, have some concern about the environmental impacts.
And those concerns need to be addressed. You can't blow them off. You must address each and every one.
But then how do you greenlight it immediately and address the impacts that you described?
The green light immediately says we're moving forward on this project. So that's the green light. We are moving forward. Now, what do we need to do to execute the task? Does it take 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it takes? We got to stop this argument and discussion about should we or should we not do it. We absolutely should do it, but we got to do it in an environmentally friendly way.
Well,
we're still arguing about whether or not we should do it.
Right. Well, it's a challenge, and should you go to Washington, you're going to have to convince some Democrats, regardless of who is president come January 2013.
And some Republicans, by the way, on why we need to do this environmentally sensitive. You got to convince both sides.
So how do you move forward on Keystone?
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to build consensus. You got to reach across both sides. You got to explain to those perhaps that might be too pro-business and not understand the environmental impacts and why we need to address those concerns. And the Democrats, we got to say, trust us. We're going to greenlight it. We're going to move forward, but you're part of the process. We're going to make sure that we do this correctly the first time.
And you're convinced that should you be elected, your moderate stances will not cause you to be backbenched by the
Not
GOP?
at all. Not a bit. In fact, after the election, the recent election, I received a call from Speaker of the House Boehner. And he called me. We had a great conversation.
Well, what's interesting about Mr. Boehner is one could argue he's actually, amongst the more moderates. It's the new Tea Party members that are the challenge.
Yes, but in political life, you have to work with everybody. You can't exclude them.
Well,
but the point I want to make is when the Speaker called, and I was very grateful and appreciative to receive the call, but I told him straight up, I'm a moderate Republican, Mr. Speaker. These are my environmental issues. These are my social issues. So this is who I am.
His name is Gary DeLong. He's a member of the Long Beach City Council, candidate for Congress. My name is Brad Palmer. So we'll be right back on California Edition.
Thank you.
If construction begins on the Keystone XL pipeline, how long would it take to complete? 3, 5, 7, or 10 years? According to the Washington Post, The Keystone XL pipeline would take approximately 3 years to complete.
Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Our guest, Jerry Shipsky, she is a member of the Long Beach City Council. And in addition to being an attorney, in addition to being a professor, she is also a nurse practitioner. So not surprisingly, you have been a big booster of a program that is now launched in Long Beach. It is really throughout the nation.
Right.
It's called Vial of Life. I love it, I love it, I love it. Tell me about it.
Well, it means life-saving information for emergencies, and it's a very simple program. What it is you take a medical information form, you fill it out, you tell everybody about your medical conditions and all the medications you take, you roll it up, you insert it into this vial, you put the cap on, put it in your refrigerator, put a magnet on your refrigerator. It lets the paramedics know that when they come and you can't speak for yourself, they can go right to the refrigerator and get the information.
A sticker on the front door.
On the front door if you
well.
want, and that lets them know we've got the medical information we need to immediately find out what medications you're taking, your medical condition, and it really dramatically helps them.
Recently, I had to call the paramedics for my mother. Thankfully, she's fine, but I didn't necessarily know all the information. I mean, even if there's a live person there, a son, a husband, a child, you don't know what your mother, father, whatever takes. And
exactly.
So this provides the information. How can we get one of these? I mean, how does this work?
Well, we're working with St. Mary Medical Center. We've just talked with Memorial. They're going to take this on as well. But our firefighters, when they go out, are going to be distributing them every time they get a call. You can get them from my council office. We've put them at the libraries. Walmart was the generous donor for the pill vials, and so you'll be able to get them at the 2 Walmarts. And we're going to put them out at libraries, senior centers, anywhere someone might have an interest to get this information.
I have to say, this is the type of public-private partnership that we need in these very tough fiscal times, which we are facing in a very dramatic way. We've spoken before, Councilwoman, about the challenges in Long Beach. Can we go there? I mean, talk to us. I know that Long Beach faces a significant deficit. It could be that the shortfall for the next fiscal year is $16 million, am I right?
But it doesn't. I disagree, and I think I've said this before. A deficit is a paper figure. What that is a projection of if revenues don't increase to the extent we think they should, they won't match expenses. However, if you remember last year, we had a $21 million surplus in oil funds. We are going to have another $21 to $22 million.
Amen.
And what I'm trying to push is that we call that unpredictable revenue, not one-time revenue, because it keeps it then back into the general fund, and we're not spending it for projects. So yes, on paper, we have a $16 million deficit.
You're confident that the deficit will be erased through
oil? I think it can be erased through oil. Also, property tax values have gone up. Sales tax, we're seeing an increase going up. We had an 11% increase last year. I think the other thing that's happening, we've got pension reform. Every single employee group has stepped up and said, we will pay our portion of the pension
It's interesting. We recently had a primary election, and 2 major cities, I think it was San Diego and San Jose, passed very significant pension reform. I mean, each governmental entity has its own pension system. What has Long Beach done? Are we on our way towards bona fide pension reform?
We have it. It's already happened.
It's done.
Every single employee group has stepped up and said, we will now pay the employee's contribution for the pension instead of the city picking that up. So the other thing they came up with is that new hires will come in at a lower formula.
It's a 2-tier system.
Which will be a cost savings. So one of the things we need to start looking at is perhaps trying to move out and encourage the people who are at a higher pay, higher pension, and replace them with people who will come in at a lower pay and lower pension.
Let me ask you about that whole notion of 2-tier system. I mean, you've been serving the government for years, and there's something about government service that's noble, no doubt about it, but at the same time, part of the lure of government service is that the benefits are so strong, be it health care, be it pension. You know, the private sector, they're quickly eliminating 401ks, pensions, whatever it may be.
Which is a real mistake, because that provides stability for people when they get older.
But
that's not
but if the government,
a good model.
But if the government is now starting to minimize pension benefits and creating a 2-tier system, are you at risk of losing that edge vis-a-vis the private sector?
No, because I think it depends on what two tiers you're talking about. In our case in Long Beach, it just means a lower formula and a longer time that you have to work. Now in public safety, you can retire at 50 and 55, and even in the non-public safety, you can do 55. This extends it to 60 for non-public safety, and it's at a lower formula. So they get less of a benefit, but it's still a good plan. It's with the CalPERS system. City of Long Beach is the largest contributor to CalPERS, so we so we significantly impact the retirement system for the state of California, and I think it's a reasonable change from the pension that was before. And I have to salute the employee groups who stepped up and said, yes, we understand.
Everyone?
Everyone.
I mean, that's stunning, because there are cities where that's not happening.
No,
Let's just
well,
say that.
and we know the last major group has indicated to us that they're ready to sign. So we know that this is happening. This is going to bring significant cost savings to the city of Long Beach, not only now, but in the future. And so that's the other thing we need to start looking at in terms of, we've got some pension reductions. How does that fit in with the overall scheme?
I want to talk about revenues generally. We know that in the beginning of the century, let's call it, there was a big move towards cutting taxes. The economy was booming. There was a sense that we could cut taxes, provide better pension benefits. And in fact, in 2000, I believe the voters of Long Beach passed what was known as Measure J, which reduced the utility users tax from 10 to 5%. We all love our taxes being cut. It's a wonderful thing. But I'm wondering if now is the time to look at that again, because we know that revenues are down so significantly for every governmental agency. I mean, it's city, county, water board, whatever it is.
I'll tell you, the 5th Council District that I represent really is kind of the canary in the mine. And I have to tell you that my residents don't support any kind of increases that personally impact them. And that's why one of the things that I'm trying to look at is we've got to look at an oil production tax that doesn't touch us, doesn't touch the consumer, really goes to the heart of the matter. That's
different than what we were talking about earlier?
Yes, we get two sources of oil revenue. We get a royalty revenue from, not only we own the wells, but we pay others to operate it, and then we get a percentage. But we also have an oil production tax, and it's a
we have it now.
Yes, we do. It's a very small one, and it's about 40 cents a barrel. And the problem is that production is going down because oil, the amount of oil in the ground is going down. So what we're doing is we're losing revenue because it's based upon per barrel. And
so you're looking to increase that tax?
Looking at to see if we can do it in a different way so that it captures some of the increased value that oil right now is at $90.66 a barrel. And so we need to look at that. So we need to keep any kind of revenue enhancement away from the direct impact of the taxpayer. They're not going to support this.
But couldn't one argue, I mean, if you increased the utility tax back to 10%, it would cost about $12.50 a month.
Right, it would bring us about $40 million in revenue.
I mean,
additional
again,
revenue.
I'm not advocating one way or the other.
No, you know, because Bruce, the voters don't trust us yet. They want to see pension reform. They want to see that if they increase any tax on themselves, that it's going to be spent appropriately, and it's not going to be spent for what they see as large salaries, large pensions, whether they are large salaries or pensions. But until we get the trust back, I don't think we can get anybody's support.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because as you know, on the June primary ballot, there was a tax proposal to increase the tax on cigarettes by $1 a pack. As we are speaking today, it looks like it's going down to defeat by a small margin. More votes are coming in, we don't know. Pretty surprising.
No, it's not, because if you see the incredible amount of money that the tobacco industry spent to spin it as if this would create more government. They've hit on the theme that is resonating with people. People don't want more government. They don't want to create new bureaucracies. They want to see if they get taxed, and most of those people who voted are not smokers. That money is going to go directly for services. And I just say the tobacco company did a wonderful job convincing people that money would not be spent appropriately.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. When we come back, we are going to be speaking with one of your fellow historians.
Great.
You are a historian for the city of Long Beach, as is Tim Grobady.
He has followed in my footsteps.
He has followed in your footsteps. He is a columnist for the Press Telegram. He wrote the Long Beach Chronicles. We'll be right back on California Edition.
Who is the largest employer in the city of Long Beach? The Long Beach Unified School District employs over 7,800 individuals. Boeing employs about 7,100.
Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Our guest, Tim Grobady, he is a columnist for the Long Beach Press-Telegram, has been a real fixture in Long Beach for just decades, serving with that newspaper since 1976. And he recently released this book. It's called Long Beach Chronicles from Pioneers to the 1933 Earthquake. I so enjoy flipping through this book. It's basically some of your best columns, some of your most intriguing, insightful columns for the last 10, 20 years.
As determined by me. Yes.
Exactly, which is the best critic, no doubt. So what brought you to this book?
Well, you know, the first line in the book in the preface is, the morgue is a beautiful place.
Right.
I spent a lot of time, and the morgue is what they call the library of clippings in the newspaper. And I was a copy boy and had to do a lot of research for reporters, and I found out where all these weird things were just along the way.
And you have found some just priceless nuggets as peppered throughout this book, and I want to talk about a few of them. One of my favorites is the moniker of the Press-Telegram in the early part of the last century, and it reads, "If it's true, it's in the press. If it's in the press, it's true. Oh,
Still
let it
true.
be so.
Still
let
true.
it be so."
That's still true of my column, anyhow.
I was going to say, that's what he said.
The rest of the paper is riddled with mistruths.
But is that, I mean, look, I'm a member of the media, you're a member of the press. I mean, I think there's a real skepticism about what the press says. Maybe that's healthy. But was it over 100 years ago that if it's in print, people just presumed it was true?
Yes. Yes. In fact, when, you know, for years, whoever we endorsed won. I mean,
It just
our
without a
endorsement
doubt.
was, yeah, our endorsement was golden. Now I think a lot of people use it in reverse.
I was going to say. You also, in that same section of your book, have just a one-line sentence that is priceless. And it's a reference to a news item, and this is how it reads. "A meeting of the school board was held this morning, but no business of importance was transacted other than the passing of several bills."
Right. I
mean,
like that.
How did you find that, Tim? I mean,
That sounds like how I would cover a school board meeting right now.
You cannot, I mean, you can't write that stuff, but they did.
Yeah. Yeah, and with a straight face. I
Speaking,
don't think it was supposed to be funny. Even.
Speaking of schools, you determined through your research that 100 years ago, a high school graduation was a community event.
It was huge.
Explain.
Well, for one thing, everybody went.
Everybody went.
Everybody in the town. I think there's a line in one of the in the news story about it, saying anybody who didn't go could only blame their lack of foresight and for missing it. The streets were literally strewn with rose petals. American Avenue, which is Long Beach Boulevard today, and its offshoots were just covered with rose petals. And the girls, the juniors, would cover the graduating seniors with flowers, and just flowers everywhere.
In the article talking about the graduation of 1909, the writer wrote, "The class of 09 of Long Beach High was the only thing of importance last night."
Right, yeah, and it was.
I mean, in some ways, it's pleasing. I mean,
it was true of a lot of events in those early days before TV and even radio, I suppose, to a large degree. That if anything happened, everybody showed up. There was 50,000 people when they unveiled the Lincoln statue in the park.
So
when we opened the Press-Telegram in 1925 on 6th and Pine, the new building, we had more than 20,000 people show up just to wander the hallway.
How large was Long Beach 100 years ago? What was the population? Do you have a sense?
It was the fastest growing city in the census, 2 censuses in a row. It just skyrocketed. But in 1910, when they had those graduate, 1909 and 1910, when literally everyone showed up. No, it wasn't a big town.
I mean, was it 50,000, 100,000? I mean,
I don't think it was 50,000 in 1910.
Right. I also want to talk about the forefathers and foremothers of Long Beach. You taught me, I had no idea, that much of early Long Beach migrated from one state in the Midwest.
Iowa, yeah.
Iowa?
Yeah.
I mean, who
Huge.
knew and why?
I think just some people showed up and they told their relatives the streets were paved with gold, and the winters are horrible in Iowa, and And they started coming out. The Des Moines Register sent a reporter out to find out what all the hubbub was about, why this was such a great town. And then more people showed up after they read that.
And when you think about Iowa historically and or today, you think about a real strong work ethic. You think about people, living the American dream. Do you feel as if the Iowans of 100 years ago still infuse Long Beach today?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Explain.
Well, it's that ethic you're talking about. Much of it was Methodist as well. So you had the combination of Methodist Iowans. They're prudish, careful.
Oh my, Puritan.
Puritan, and I think there's still a lot of that in a lot of areas. They came. They had pretty much given up on their work ethic by the time they came out here. They were mostly retired, and they came out here to enjoy themselves.
But then the retirees' kids came,
right?
And that's how we got this wave of new immigrants to Long Beach via Iowa.
The Iowa picnics back in those days drew in excess of 100,000 people to Recreation or Bixby Parks. It was just a madhouse. Everybody come.
One of your columns really touched me, actually, and it dealt with your daughter, Hannah.
Yes.
And you and Hannah took a walk through the Long Beach Municipal Cemetery, which has a number of soldiers from World War I.
Right.
Tell me about that walk and how you discussed it through your column.
It was a great day for the subject. It was raining fairly hard. It was muddy all over the place. There were aspects of
All eerie.
Yeah.
It almost felt like France.
There was no one there alive. Plenty of dead people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just you and Hannah were the alive ones.
And one of the graves we were looking for was Frank O'Neill. We had done a little research prior to find out. There's a book called Long Beach in the Great War, and it talks about all the people who died or served over there. And so we were looking for his grave, and we found it pretty much by accident. It was covered with mud, and we had to shovel that away. But it was a remarkable story, and it just kept leading. As the more research we did, the more we found out about him, and then it turned out.
That's your phone. It's okay. It's television. Don't worry. It's much more
Excuse
important.
me, I have to take this.
Yeah, it's much more important than we could ever imagine.
It's my agent.
Exactly.
That's who it is. It's Jerry Shipsky.
It's Jerry Shipsky, who was just on our episode. So there you have it.
Then that kind of remarkably led to finding out about Hannah's great-grandfather.
Yes, tell me about that.
Well, he was from Iowa, and he'd moved out to Long Beach, but he was still in Iowa when he was in World War I, and he met, help me out with the guy's name he met.
Charlie Swift.
Charlie Swift, and they were from the same little town in Iowa. I can't remember the name, but it was a small town in Iowa. And they met over there, and I found that by looking through newspaper archives for Archie Hauk, who was my grandfather's. And there was a letter that Charlie had written to his father, talking about meeting Archie on the streets of Bourges, France, and then he went on to talk about his own experiences in World War I. But
so as we conclude, Tim, give me a sense of what putting this book together meant for you. What did you gain from it? What did you learn from it?
Well, I learned over 20 years of writing the columns, just about what a companionable town it was. Everybody pretty much knew each other. That was very homogenous, for better or for worse. Now we're the most diverse city in the United States, according to the records. And then, obviously there's good and bad about both of those things. I think diversity is ultimately a better thing to have. Mm-hmm.
What do you hope your readers will gain after they read this tome?
Well, I hope the idea is they'll learn about what Long Beach was like in the old days when it was just regular old folks. There weren't a lot of big issues. When there was an issue, when they wanted to build a school, the citizens all said yes and we passed bonds to build piers, to build schools.
If it were only that way today.
Yeah, no, anything the city fathers wanted, the citizenry said, yeah, do it.
I want to thank you so much for putting this together. I very much enjoyed reading the columns in here and reading your column almost every day on the Long Beach Press-Telegram website and newspaper. His name is Tim Grobady. He's the author of the Long Beach Chronicles. My name is Brad Palmer. Thank you so much for watching California Edition.